We're going to get you fired up with a discussion about the Internet of Things. Earlier today we had a power panel like this one. This one might be a little better, but the other one was pretty good. That was talking about cloud computing, and it quickly turned into a discussion of the Internet of Things. Kind of got a sense of IoT being cloud computing times 10 or maybe times 1 million, something like that. So we have 4 people here who are going to talk about it. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So if you could do that and then just give us a couple of minutes about who you are and what you do, and then I'll start a discussion and we'll see what we can do after that. Work our way down this way.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brendan O'Brien. I'm the co-founder and chief evangelist for Aria Systems. That's actually the company that's on your lanyard. We are the inventors of the first cloud-based billing platform, and we center our business entirely on delivering monetization strategies for large companies that are delivering some kind of digital business to their respective markets. Obviously, IoT, cloud, big data, these are things that lend themselves very readily to that model, so happy to be here. Thanks, Roger.
Hi, I'm Dave Landa. I'm COO of Kintone.com. Kintone is a build-your-own business application platform that incorporates collaboration tools as well. And the focus is really on rapid development and deployment of custom-built applications. And we tie into the Internet of Things in that we're kind of the working within the application layer, trying to make sense of the data that's coming off of the billions and billions of sensors and monitors that are starting to go out into the marketplace. So that's where we land. Good to be here.
Hi, I'm Esmeralda Swartz, and I was formerly the CMO of Metrotech, which was a monetization company focused on supplying billing and settlement software for a variety of enterprise verticals. And last September, we were acquired by Ericsson, which is a global company that then in the last 3 years combined. So happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Ian Khan, and I'm the head of innovation and the CMO at Solgenia. We are based out of Toronto, and we are a cloud monetization company really focusing on how to derive monetization and drive revenue through various aspects of the cloud, again, IoT included. And it's great to be here. Thank you.
Let's do a little survey here. As far as the Internet of Things goes, show of hands, if you are actively involved with an Internet of Things, an IoT project now. It's not bad. And if you think you're going to be involved with an IoT project, say within the next year. A lot more people. And how about just here because you don't know a lot about the Internet of Things or you'd like to learn more? And there's a lot of people. So
Wasting time before the party starts at 6 o'clock?
well, that's thank you, because I'll let you be the.
Is that your joke? I'm sorry.
I'll let you be the bad guy. That's it exactly. Standing between. Well, the reason is because the IoT. Then we're going to do another series. Internet of Things can mean, and help me out, panelists, if I miss one. Wearables. So who's interested in that? Like watches and shirts and shoes. Not a lot of wearables. Good thing we don't have someone from Apple here. How about the industrial internet, manufacturing, logistics, everything that goes with the industrial internet? Have you heard of the Industrial Internet Consortium? Yeah, there's a few people that are doing that. How about, what's the, why am I blanking out? Smart cities, the idea of a smart city or a smart nation or a smart region or smart transportation. There's someone over there. That's the area I like a lot, but I think I'm in the minority.
Connected car.
How about connected cars? That's transportation, but connected cars. No? Okay. What am I missing?
Home security.
What's that?
Smart homes.
Smart homes. Who's interested in that? Okay. Who forgot to turn their cell phone off before he started the session? It's a thing. Okay. So let's proceed down the road and so to speak. And just go one by one. Ian, in your case, what part of the IoT is most important to your company and your customers, and how are you addressing it?
I interestingly had a speech earlier as well, a session that was focused on IoT and cloud. From my perspective, I believe the idea of being able to drive a lot of revenue through IoT is key. And that's what I see with my customers as well. Analysts have predicted that by 2020, as much as $300 billion will be generated by IoT and connected devices. So for us, that's a major kind of an area that we can help our customers kind of dip their hands into and empower them through that monetization.
Esmeralda?
Yeah, so I think that we're in the midst of probably the biggest transformation that we will see, and it's starting now, where we're moving from ubiquitous connectivity and all of these connected devices and sensors that are deployed in pretty much everything that we take for granted every day. And we're now at the point where it's about empowering horizontal ecosystems, so moving from today's vertically oriented silos to how you can develop services and connected ecosystems for the benefit of a specific vertical or a series of verticals. And I think that's what's really exciting, because it's about what can you layer on top in terms of value-added services and new revenue opportunities that need to be monetized.
Horizontal ecosystems, each one of them probably being slightly different.
Correct.
And the role of, what do you see as the role of standards and the role of some companies that may try to dominate?
Correct. And I think we certainly as an industry, we all benefit from open standards and enabling these open ecosystems. But of course, all vendors want to own the entire ecosystem, and that obviously hurts the industry as a whole.
We believe in any ecosystem that's open to us.
That's right.
That's what we like. Dave?
Yeah, so I think we're really interested in, obviously the devices that are being put out into the marketplace are, accelerating at rapid pace. 5 billion or 9 billion now, I think. Talking about 50 billion in just a few years. As of right now, still though, the majority of the connected devices are still laptops and smartphones, as opposed to sensors and other devices. So I think what really interests us is being able to take all of this data, and I think IDC said by 2020 there'd be 3 million petabytes of data coming off of these devices. I think it's being able to harness, being able to capture that data, aggregate it in a way that's meaningful through applications that are developed that can either be horizontal or vertical, and can enable either M-to-M, machine-to-machine actions, or even M-to-M to H, which is machine-to-machine to human actions, but really give the that strong application or software foundation to be able to take full advantage of what I think the Internet of Things and the devices, what the opportunity is there. So our focus is really about creating the software and the applications around all of those devices that are being put out there.
Yeah, it reminds me, I guess, of a country, if there's one of those countries that has 11,000 or 100,000 pieces of their currency to the dollar, the numbers start to boggle in my mind a little bit. Yeah. So we talk about billions of devices and trillions of dollars and billions of this and trillions of that, and it's a little hard for me to keep it straight. But you mentioned M2M, and of all the data, we're in, I think, the age of the zettabyte.
Yes.
And I said this earlier today. I tried to define it because I always forget. Is it a trillion terabytes? I forget. It's a big number, trillion terabytes, and that's much data. But M2M is a lot of that data. How much? You see what kind of percentage is actually machines talking to machines that don't have a human involved? Do you have any idea of what you're gonna, other than it's significant? And
I think it's interesting to look at kind of the different industries, and you mentioned
Yeah.
kind of smart city, smart grid.
Yeah.
I think about we've got some clients in the solar space.
Okay.
Where there's definitely an aspect of the M-to-M, but ultimately you're getting all the data from the sensors from the solar arrays, bringing it up to the cloud,
Yeah.
putting an application layer over that, and you're being able to start making kind of smart decisions on things, they haven't got to the point, at least in the alternative energy space. Now, they're already putting some smart grids together in some of the larger major utility space. But in the alternative space, it's really about quickly being able to react to changes in what's happening in your generation load. So it's actually seeing the M to M and then incorporating the H, getting the human there to make quick updates or repairs, and then getting everything back online again and keeping everyone in one centralized loop, as it were. So I still see what we're looking at is a lot of H at the end.
Still have the H. Brendan, everyone's looking at Cloud Expo, Internet of Things Expo. We've got a little cheat thing here that says that they're one and the same to you?
They're certainly it's going to be a distinction without a difference very shortly. Dave actually cited that IDC report about where we're going to be in 2020 in terms of data volumes. That same report actually said, and they combined the numbers themselves, that if you combine IoT revenues with cloud revenues, because they're seeing that line blur, you're looking at $14.9 trillion in global economy being driven by those two things. And the lines are blurred. I mean, IoT, if it's about, well, what is it? I mean, IoT is not a new technology. It's Moore's law writ large upon hardware that's now commoditizable, upon connectivity that is now ubiquitous, as Merolda said, and about a flood of data that is now graspable, right? We couldn't kind of wrestle data to the ground 10 years ago, and now we can, right? There's a ton of vendors here who do that really, really well, and storage is cheap. Add all that stuff together, and you're looking at a large economy, but what's important, if you listen to the Forbeses and the Gartners of the world, is that 14.9 trillion is really not going to come from all these cool devices. It's going to come from the services that those devices unlock, right? That the device is just a barrier to entry, and once you get in, that's where the service is going to become truly, truly valuable. And look at all those industries you cited. Look at connected car and look at smart home and look at industrial internet. They're not looking for ways to monetize and make money out of the devices. They're looking to grab market share so that they can own, hopefully, a recurring relationship with a set of customers, and that's where they're going to derive their value.
A lot of this seems to be, or I think will have to be driven by government. Now, go to Ian, whose company's based in Canada, which may be less messed up than the U.S. or maybe more messed up. I'm not sure. It may not matter to you, but what role do you see with government, and particularly in Canada? Do you see, I know your customers are not just in Canada, but do you see any differences in the way the government may be thinking about all this smart stuff compared to what's happening in the U.S.?
There's a bit of a mixed feeling that I have. On one side, governments are really slow at generally adopting technology. So if something's happening in the consumer space today, governments might do it 10, 15, 20 years from now. Having said that, technology is also moving ahead at a very fast pace. So that exponential growth of technology might actually prove our models to be correct really faster, and governments might, take into those technologies even sooner than they used to with the older stuff. In Canada specifically, we do not have a lot of traction with government kind of looking at IoT and kind of embracing it, but they've started. They've started looking at the cloud as a technology, and I know of certain few regional and municipal governments that are using AWS to host their data and to host their services. Again, the task at hand is to help them understand how technology can help, how it can surpass the red tape, and so on and so forth.
What about things like government encouraging more energy efficient buildings and the whole idea of, I do a lot of research about economic growth in the world. And I lived in a developing country for many years, and the developing world uses about 3% to 5% per person electricity that the developed world. And actually Canada uses more than the U.S., but that's just because it's cold.
Yeah.
that's the reason.
Yeah.
But the U.S. is not the only big offender. Yeah. You can't bring 4 billion people in the developing world up to a higher standard if you're going to have to give them 30 or 50 times the electricity. It's physically not possible to do that. So efficiency then becomes the way to go.
Absolutely.
And the more enlightened governments seem to be trying to embrace that. Do you see anything like that going in Canada, trying to get buildings to be smarter about their use of energy?
There's definitely that aspect, especially with the new constructions, and there's a lot of incentives. Governments generally encourage the industry to kind of utilize. So the governments have subsidies that they're offering building operators and so on, just to do some technological advances within the new structure. So there's definitely that aspect that we're seeing. In terms of really adding kind of the cloud and IoT to that, it's still a few more years before it kind of becomes mainstream, and some of the new buildings have the latest and the greatest of sensors installed. I think that might happen within the next few years for sure. But there's an early kind of knowledge spreading that's happening right now, and for sure we see within the next 3 to 5 years there might be something out there that's commercial and that's in use.
Is that of interest to you, Esmeralda, as far as this whole idea of?
So I think that in order for IoT specifically, and I agree with Brendan on it's hard to separate IoT from cloud, and I would add big data, because it's those three things that really...
And we have.
And you have.
Small.
That really bring to life the services and the technology. I think in the context of the role that government plays versus private and even digital citizens, like all of us in the room, I think it's absolutely cooperation that needs to occur between the smart digital citizen, public sector, and private sector to really bring some of these programs to life. We're involved probably at the start with some of these infrastructure projects, so we have a view on what some of those services are perhaps before they become mainstream. But I think in the utility sector, for example, there's a lot that's going on right now in the U.S. and Europe and other countries with demand response programs. And the pricing is a powerful motivator in terms of driving behavior of people. And so this concept of behavioral billing and utilizing that as a way to drive the behavior of a consumer or a large industrial player is absolutely being done. I think in terms of some of the smart city projects that we've been involved with, it's actually fascinating to see what happens when you have all of this ubiquitous connectivity and sensors deployed in everything from lighting to parking spots, park benches, solar paneled trash containers. All of that is a powerful way to deal with, whether it's a developed country or a developing country, with the massive urbanization that's actually now occurring. So in order to provide that quality of life and that experience that people expect from being city dwellers, we need to get smarter about the use of technology. And I think IoT, cloud, and big data have a very significant role to play, and are already playing that role in some pretty interesting examples that you can already point to.
Well, this Smart Cities report I just read, Singapore is mentioned, for example. Boston is mentioned. Yep. Montreal is mentioned. The report, I think, was sponsored, the one I read, by someone in France because it had France listed, and then the first sentence was, France is not doing a very good job of embracing.
Maybe they needed the data to make it.
Something like that, but the effort is there. Massive urbanization throughout the world.
Right.
I was in Manila, Philippines. There's 24 million people in Greater Manila, and there's half a dozen other cities in Asia of that scale. In the U.S., actually, things are becoming more urbanized now. There's a trend back. So along those lines, Dave, what are you seeing as far as your activities?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think taking off from Esmeralda said, I think without question, being able to provide the data in front of people's faces and seeing either it being the pricing increases or just actually usage numbers, just having to see more data more often tends to impact behavior. It's kind of just, even if it doesn't necessarily align with specifically what you're trying to accomplish, just seeing the data can have an impact on folks. So the more data that comes up, I think, as long as it's directed in the right way, is positive. But
So like energy usage in your...
yeah, seeing the energy. I was just thinking of, like your
Real time.
Fitbit or your scale, things
Yeah.
like that. You see the data. You may not even, go on a diet if you're overweight, but if you keep seeing that data over time, subconsciously it starts impacting the way you
Really?
eat.
I might try that.
Yeah, there's a lot of studies, sociology studies.
Okay.
I think that could be
good news.
extrapolated to some
Okay.
of the other things with the smart home.
But I'm thinking
Sure.
energy too. I live in a cold climate right now near Chicago, and you have an idea of what your utility is going to be, but you don't know exactly
Yeah,
when it
until it
gets
hits
really
you.
cold. And you have an idea of what's efficient and what's not in your house, but you don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if a little meter in real time that sort of told me what this was doing to my bill, if that would add to my stress or if it would make me behave better.
Might depend on your personality, I guess. But,
It wouldn't make me behave better, probably. But it'd probably be a good thing. You'd say, "Oh, I get it. So I shouldn't do that at this point in time." That sort of thing. Or
Yeah.
I should make this appliance as efficient as that one, or something like that.
That was one thought. The other thought that I had actually was going back to government, and also getting at the larger infrastructure standpoint, is really just the reality of our natural resources. Coming from California, we have a pretty major drought going on, and we're already starting to see a lot more activity in the Internet of Things around irrigation sensors, and being able to get a lot smarter in your farming. Getting a lot smarter in how much water you use by using sensors that can manage that much more efficiently.
And government policy can come in.
And government starts to push toward that, right? So it's almost the government follows. When Jerry Brown said we got to cut back 25%, that's reacting to the reality of our natural resources. But
Yeah, I've lived out there quite a bit, and the last drought, I think it was put a brick in the toilet. So, so I think we've advanced beyond
little
that.
bit, a little
That
bit,
was during
yeah.
the first time Jerry was governor.
that's right.
Now that he's governor again, it's gotten a little bit more sophisticated.
A little bit
both
more
with
sophisticated,
business and people, and that's a very serious issue. There's 30 plus, I don't know how many people in California now, but it's 30 plus million, and a small percentage, what am I trying to say? A small increment results in a big total amount, big aggregate amount, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the agriculture makes a big chunk of the water.
About a year ago, at this show, it was a very rainy day, and we had a special little event we were doing, and Brendan was part of it, and it rained and rained and rained and rained, and we almost didn't make it. But through the rain, I heard him talking about monetization and being smart about the business side of IoT.
Yep.
So we've been talking quite a bit about what government should do and incentives for people. What about the business side? What sort of monetization and how can business people really be thinking of this is something we should do?
At the end of the day, it's all about the data. It's all about the data. It's all about embracing the data. Monetization is bigger than billing, right? And I think that's the fundamental problem that a lot of people bring to the table when they say they want to monetize something, is their thought process is centered around the bill, right? You said it yourself.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my meter and I'm worried about
The bill.
The bill, right? And that's not that that's a bad thing, but it's part of a larger puzzle. And the data is the key to unlocking all the parts of that puzzle, right? We're talking about direct monetization, putting things on a bill. Well, certainly in the cloud platform as a service, infrastructure as a service world, that's a very natural thing to want to do, to use that data to charge for VM hours or disk storage or whatever commodity you're charging for. That's a consumption data-based bill. But that data has importance at the macro level as well, right? In any monetization strategy. Even if you're charging your customers sort of an all-you-can-eat buffet of $19.95 a month for whatever service, right? In a recurring revenue model, right? If you're a product manager or you're a customer care manager, you're looking at things like a churn report or a retention report, because that's your job. Keep customers. customers, right? And you can look at a report that says, oh, I've got 40% churn on my 2-month free trial product that then rolls to $19.95, but that's not a particularly actionable piece of information, right? What am I going to do with that fact? Okay, 40% churn. Well, if I can drill down on that and actually compare that churn directly to the consumption habits of those customers, well, there might be some great insight there. I might discover, for example, that the people that use my service a lot during that 2-month free trial period are actually not churning out so high. So maybe now I can make a decision that's a little bit more intelligent. I can say, you know, I'm going to entice those 2-month people to stay longer. I'm going to sunset out that 2-month free trial product in favor of a 4-month free trial product. Right. And I'm going to incent them to stay on, you know, with a targeted coupon to stay for an additional 2 months. You can't do even those macro level decisions unless you're embracing that data. And too often in monetization strategies, the strategy as it pertains to data is an avoidance one, right? It's, let me look at that giant pile of data that's coming out of all those sensors, out of my core systems, and pluck out the 2 things that I think in advance are going to influence a line item on a bill, and that's a short-sighted strategy.
All that data coming in, now I'm an IT person, how am I getting a grip on this? How am I getting a grip on this? There's got to be different systems. Is there one company that can solve all of these problems, no matter how much you all love, you know, companies you work with and work for?
No.
You know, how I get it, data driven. But it's coming in and
it's a world of best of breed coalitions.
Yeah.
We're all part of that coalition, right?
World of best of breed coalitions. I remember that.
All right.
Yeah.
And by the way, sorry, one other thought, and I
yeah.
just wanted, because I feel like I need to counteract your constant bashing of Canada.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, I'm not. But governments, just back to the government topic, because I think it is really interesting. It's a truism that government is, you know, traditionally last to adopt the cool new stuff, right, that we're all putting out there. But they've got their motivators too, right? And it might be a drought in California. But one really interesting thing, and this is very directly IoT related, is you know, people are driving electric cars now. They're driving hybrid cars. Well, how do most states pay for their roads? From a gasoline tax. So states that have high adoption rates of electric and hybrid cars are watching their income from gasoline tax plummet and asking themselves, what are we going to do? How are we going to build new bridges? And the state of Oregon has just launched, or is about to launch rather, a really cool pilot where they are taking telematics devices, embedding them in hybrid and electric cars, and using those telematics devices, which are IoT devices, by the way, right, to figure out what people's driving patterns and how many miles they drive, and issuing those drivers a bill, a tax bill. Now, I get nobody's thrilled to hear that the outcome of that is another tax bill,
right,
but the reality is that's tax you would otherwise be paying at the pump that you're not, and the state needs the roads fixed. So actually the whole country is watching
right,
that pilot, and believe me, we're all going to see that happen very, very shortly in our own states.
No, I love Canada. I would live there, except I'm not smart enough. No, I'm not smart enough to learn all the new spellings. It's hard enough for me to learn as much as I did, you know, down here. The word monetization is actually on Ian's shirt, so we're going to let you kind of riff on what he was saying and how it affects what you're doing.
Okay. And just talking again about data, I think everything at the end of the day is very data driven. And to answer, just to add to your point, is one company or one vendor be able to provide us everything we need to do with data? It's impossible, because there's just so many different types of data. I might need accounting data out of a certain segment of industry, and somebody might need performance data from a flood sensor, or so on and so forth. So the amount of data that's driving the industry as a whole is something staggering to deal with. And I think that has a lot of opportunities of monetization. Even if there were 100 new vendors that would do something with data, I think there's space for even 100 more to come in. So monetization, although it's kind of a fundamental fact of the existence of vendors to be successful and to exist, I think there's a lot of opportunity in monetization of IoT, monetization of cloud, and the only way for us to kind of succeed as vendors is to work together as a coalition or as a group to kind of address the larger scale issues, such as a drought in California or too much snow in Canada, whatever it is. And on the governments, you know, I honestly think if governments were privatized and run as a corporation, we would have a lot more faster decisions take place. That's it for now.
And when's the next election?
So I just want to provide
Yes,
a different
jump in there.
perspective on monetization because what I'm hearing here is just really monetization, and I would say it's being described very one-dimensionally in terms of the billing and usage and consumption of a service to an end customer or to an enterprise. And if you think about IoT, and we're talking about ecosystems, we're talking about the number of parties that need to come together to provide that, that service or to bring a new business model to market. And monetization to me does not just mean billing, it means settlement. So it's really two sides of the coin. There's the billing in terms of everyone understands the concept of a bill. We get those every month. And then there's the much more complex behind the scenes that needs to happen, which is how do I compensate? How do I enter into a revenue sharing type of relationship with other suppliers that are bringing their own capabilities or services into that service that you yourself are bringing to market to deliver differentiation. So IoT really for us, I think the most important aspect is really the compensation and the settlement across these ecosystems. That's going to really set this apart and really drive a lot of the new offerings, because no company is going to be able to do it alone. And that by definition means that you have to then compensate partners, resellers, suppliers that are part of that ecosystem.
Now, we've been talking a lot earlier today in some of the talks in this room and panels, and I know some of the sessions about API. It's an API economy. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking, and I think because we're talking about horizontal ecosystems and best of breed coalitions and all this stuff, that seems to lead to, you get a little bit more geeky, to sort of API driven.
It's just fundamentally what we know to be true, and this is not unlike what happened with with just the mobile platforms themselves. In terms of, you start with the mobile platform and then you start building out APIs and developer ecosystem, and you want to build applications on top of those platforms. And people expect to be compensated for their part in supplying those applications or those value-added services. So I think that we're at the point even today where even if you look at a cloud service, why would anyone want to enter the market with just basic storage compute capacity when you have Amazon and the other market leaders? And if this year it's all about providing cloud to enterprises. Why would you enter the market if you can't add in other capabilities that allow you to differentiate that offering into the marketplace? And so by the very definition of if you believe that to be true, that implies that that settlement or compensation is actually even more critical than the billing that you do, whether that's a simple subscription-oriented type of model that any billing company can do, or even usage and consumption.
Okay. Dave, you were shaking your head yes about
Yeah, well, I think I'm the only one not in the monetization world here. So I'm more in software as a service. So when you mentioned API, I was ready to jump in at that.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Because API, I mean, that's kind of table stakes for our business, right? I mean, we have an open API, and I don't know what the percentage, but well over 50% of all of our clients will be using, in an integrated way, other services with our service integrated together. And oftentimes we're not dealing with monetization issues just because folks will already have a service, and it's kind of a different economy. It's already a little bit more developed than IoT. But yeah, I mean, the idea of providing best-of-breed solutions to folks in kind of one central location is really, I think, where we're trying to get to. Getting back to Internet of Things, for us, one of our major sort of solar Internet of Things client is one in which we've used our open API and wrote to like 8 different monitoring solutions or sensor solutions from different solar arrays that had different, basically they were pulling the data from the sensors into their separate clouds, as it were. We wrote to all of those, pulled all the data into our one central location, and could then put a layer of more meaningful and actionable reporting and results. And so the integration with various different data sources is absolutely essential to get to really actionable, meaningful reporting and results.
So Brendan, how does a vendor go to a customer now? How does a customer define what they want to do? It sounds like you almost need to start defining things at the highest level possible.
Yeah.
And work your way down.
Well, if anybody hears from the big global SIs, you have a great business model here, because these coalitions need managing, these solutions need architected, and basically this API model that we all understand has come inside the firewall, right? I mean, if you look at how any developer sits down and writes a system today, they write it with this sort of software as a service construct, even if it's inside their own firewall. So obviously we're using APIs when we're talking to external vendors for whatever service we're getting from them, but even inside my own stack, I'm going to arrange all these things so they're talking to each other as a service. So this coalition approach is critical. Now, unfortunately, for those of us that are vendors providing some piece of that coalition, what it means is if that model is built correctly, it makes it relatively easy to decouple any one of us and plug somebody else in, so we all have to do a really good job at whatever service we're providing.
Is Ian, the same experience for you? How do you interact with customers in this environment?
I think a lot of it is actually evolving as we go on. With the technologies changing, and we're finding new ways to kind of make things possible. So I think I don't have a straight answer for that. This is how we're solving it. But I think, like you rightly said, a lot of it is you can plug somebody else in. We're trying to do new coding practices. Build in the SaaS software within your firewalls. There's a lot of experimentation as well that's taking place, and I think that's going to continue because technology is a changing aspect of life. It's constantly going to evolve, and the ways we do things are going to change.
As a would you say digital citizens? Is that what?
Digital citizens.
As a digital citizen, that's what I thought. What are our responsibilities? Because it does seem, sometimes I think I'm just naive and stupid, but it does seem like all of this stuff ironically may empower individuals more than larger entities. As a digital citizen, what should we be thinking of and doing as we enter this new era?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the issues in terms of the wider technology adoption were brought up in some sessions I attended this morning, this afternoon. Security. I mean, that's, clearly the attack surface has just gotten much larger with all of these sensors deployed in just about everything that we use on a daily basis. Okay. How comfortable are you with, data privacy? Data privacy is, it's an individual responsibility, but it's also where does government come in?
Now where
right?
They should or shouldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really fascinating to watch, as much as we're talking about all of this really cool technology, at the end of the day, it will be consumed and adopted on a massive scale. Based on, is it performing a useful service? In other words, is it something that I do every day that can just be made much easier? And my favorite example is Uber. I'm a big Uber fan. It's basically a car driving service. Takes you from point A to B. You throw in cloud for the algorithm that provides the really great user experience. Mm-hmm. You have the sensors on your smartphone or the driver's phone, and they transformed a very simple service into one that's widely adoptable. And I think that you're going to see, again, more of these everyday services that you take for granted. We're involved with some connected car projects that are beyond the...
At the end of the day,
right.
It's like 100-year-old technology. It's still a car. I see it. I think the food is available.
Obviously.
It feels like or something. Yeah. So what I like to do is encourage everybody to talk to our panelists. I hope you're going to hang around for for the expo. Please talk to them with any questions that you have. I thank you very much for all of your thoughts. I wish we had more time, but it's time to go to the expo floor. Thank you very much for attending.